Welcome back to Real Community Talks, where we meet with micro-level influencers doing macro-level things. I'm your host, Matt DeSilva, and on today's episode, we have a fellow Maltonian, a fellow Beard Gang brother, and one of the dopest lyricists I've heard growing up, my boy Noyz, on the show today. Noyz, thanks for coming out to RCT today, bro.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
So for those two waste people, I don't know why you wouldn't know who this guy who don't know who Noyz is. Are you ready for this? He's an MC, producer, and community organizer who's performed at some of the largest music festivals in North America and has been featured on platforms such as the Huffington Post, Complex, BBC Radio, among others. He's currently a host/producer on the Immigrant Hustle Pod. Shout outs to them. We're going to drop a link to their podcast so you can check them out. Completed his undergrad in psych and neuroscience at McMaster U. Completed his master's in psych from York U. And was a teaching assistant at York as well. Completed a post-grad at Humber in addictions and mental health. Is currently a concurrent disorders counselor and case manager. He is a mental health peer support worker at PCHS, Punjabi Community Health Services. Was a research assistant at Hamilton Health Sciences. An artist educator with Unity Charity. Has worked with CNIB with visually impaired children. And among many other things, he is a husband, a rapper, a beat maker, an activist, an entrepreneur, a workshop facilitator, and just an all-around super woke guy. Did I miss anything?
No, it's pretty comprehensive.
All right, cool. So before we get into it, I noticed you're a comic book fan. So with the passing of one of the GOATs in the comic industry, what did Stan Lee mean to you?
Man, like, everybody's always got that growing up. It was like Marvel or DC. What was your thing? Like, I was a fan of both, but I had the bigger connection to Marvel. I think because like the animated series back in the 90s, whether it was X-Men, Spider-Man, like I grew up on those. Those were the go-tos. And I think X-Men specifically, like it was saying something. It was socially conscious. It wasn't just heroes for the sake of heroes. It was actually these people have powers, but they also have problems. You know, they're trying to solve some sort of ill in society. And I think Stan Lee, he was kind of ahead of the curve in that sense. Not even just with the X-Men, but if you look at other heroes like Black Panther, like Marvel specifically was through Stan Lee's vision was huge as far as trying to capture what the climate of society was at the time. So Stan Lee that's gonna leave a huge hole. I think for anybody that's grown up with the comic books, with the cartoons, and now with the movies especially, that's a big hole to fill. But I was reading it somewhere that like what he created, and the fact that he was 95, so he lived a very full life. But the things that he created and the way they've connected and touched so many people, it's like he's unlocked immortality through his creations.
Wow. Yeah, legacy. And you know what? When you kind of talked about the X-Men, like you get those themes of racism in there, and I'm just like, I didn't think about that as how mutants mirrored racism, and that's cool because he even addressed like even sexism by having female, like some of the female characters on Marvel are actually the most powerful in the universe. Like I think Captain Marvel that's coming out, like she's supposed to like be able to obliterate Thanos. So
like even like Storm, if you want to tell everyone's that's like, who would win this? Like Storm would body everybody.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And there's that one, what's her name, that can take powers from people. I think she actually is one of the most powerful.
Rogue.
Yeah, Rogue. Yeah. That's crazy. So shout out to Stan Lee, rest in peace. If you haven't checked out Marvel movies, I don't know, you're not living. Like the MCU, I think is one of the most like on top of the game cinematic universes out there, right? Like I don't think anyone's been able to do that consistently and keep the same characters in a universe like they have. But so why don't we get into the meat of stuff? So what's your origin story? So who is Noyz and where are you from?
I'm from the great village of Malton.
Yeah. Shout outs.
Yeah, for sure, man. I spent a beautiful childhood here in Malton. I was here up until grade 6. So I was centered here. My uncles and my mom's brother, they were centered here. So I had my cousins, and then my dad's uncle was here as well. So we had a lot of family support just within Malton, also within Rexdale as well. So this was kind of like the hub for like a good 11, 12 years.
Wow.
And then from there, moved to Brampton. That was a bit of a transition, because like you spend like your most formative years within one town. And you get used to it, you kind of picture yourself there forever. And then you end up moving and you kind of got to start from scratch over again. So that was like 98 when I moved to Brampton. Yeah, it took some time to get used to it, but eventually, you know, you start to make friends and, you know, develop your own interests, develop your own, just grow as a person, really. The things that you like and the things that your friends like, and you start to really create your own community in that sense and find your tribe, essentially. So yeah, you know, grew up through high school, went to Heart Lake. Okay. Yeah, shout out to Heart Lake, man. There's a lot of artists have come through there.
Yeah.
Like Be Magic.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Be Magic was
from
you guys
Heart
met
Lake.
In
high school. Okay.
Actually, we didn't meet in high school, even though we were both at the same high school at the same time. We met years later, so we were both well out of high school.
Oh, that's crazy.
So I watched him perform. It was like his very first gig too.
Yeah.
He was opening for Humble the Poet.
Okay.
So I just went to go check it out. I went with a couple of buddies of mine, and then after the show, they were saying hi to Magic, and I'm just like, oh, you guys know him? They're like, yeah, come say what up to him.
Yeah.
And then so I'm just saying hi to him, and then you know how friends are. They're just like, yo, my boy can rap. I'm like, man, don't put me on the spot. I'm not trying to
like an 8 Mile moment right there.
Yeah. So I'm like, all right, cool. I guess I'll do it. So I just like spit a couple freestyles. Magic kicked some freestyles too. So we just went back and forth for a bit. And he's like, yo, where do you record? I'm like, I don't record anywhere. I'd never recorded at that point. Wow. I don't even think I had a gig at that point. I might have had like 1 or 2. Yeah. So I was like very raw at that point. And so he was like, yo, come through to the studio. Yeah. So it was just like a chance meeting like that. Chance meeting. Like we live very close to each other. Yeah. We're at the same high school at the same time, but it took like mutual friends in downtown Toronto years later before we actually connected on some level.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, I think one of the first tracks I heard when I came onto like your stuff was that Fateh song Renaissance. Oh yeah, it's the first one I heard, and then like my initial impression from that was like, and I'm not trying to diss certain types of rappers or whatever, but they're like, you kind of get the same kind of theme about materialism and like self-fulfillment. Yeah. But from yours, I'm like, wow, this guy sounds woke. Like he's actually speaking like, and he sounds like academic, and like he sounds like he's like he's choosing his words intentionally, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty dope. Yeah. So, and I think there was another guy from Cali, I think after you, was like really good too as well, right?
Yeah, Mandeep Sethi, shout out to him. Man. He's another dude that is a big inspiration in the sense that not even just how he writes and how he performs, because he's like super dope with it, but he's also very involved in community. Wow. Just recently, actually, he started a program where he was going into youth correctional facilities and teaching them how to record, how to use beat machines. That's dope. Yeah. So he's very like, hip hop saved him, and he's trying to use hip hop to you know, pay it forward and try to help other people. I like that. Yeah. So you're kind of talking about going from Malton to Brampton, and you said when in my research when I checked you out, you kind of mentioned the idea of you know, growing up here to immigrant parents, feeling a part of society while also standing out, and there's that sense of otherness, but how you embraced it. So talk about maybe some moments that really made you feel like standing, like you stood out, or like you felt like the other when you were growing up as a kid. I think just like even just little things you don't even consider, like you know, I've always kept my hair, and just like, okay, we're gonna go class trip, we're gonna go to the swimming pool, and it's just like, oh, I can't like, you know, just you have to think in a different way. It's like, okay, I gotta make sure I can maintain my hair in the pool and outside of the pool, like I gotta dry it. Just like very little things that make you self-conscious to a different degree that like other kids didn't necessarily have to worry about. True. Yeah. And even just like little things as well, like you don't really realize the impact that they have on you until you're a lot older. Like even just the way, you know, people pronounce your name. Yeah. Like you start to, like, teachers will pronounce it in a very butcher it. They'll butcher it, exactly. Yeah. And then you start to pronounce your name in the same way. You start to introduce yourself using that same butchered pronunciation. Yeah. And it's like, it wasn't until years later where I'm like, why do we do this? You know, so you start to you become self-conscious to a different degree, and it's like, well, do other people have to deal with this to the same extent? You know,
it's like those guys that you like, they have like a traditional like heritage name, and then like they're just like, just call me Sonny or just call me Ricky or something like that. It's just because I guess they're just tired of people mistaking their name, right?
It's like they've kind of taken that preemptive step to say, like, I know you're going to get it wrong anyway, so I'm going to make it easy for you. And so, yeah, I feel like a lot of times being a person of color, or like, being very open with your ethnic identity, you're always trying to minimize yourself to make other people feel comfortable.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was
so true.
probably a big part of growing up for me. And that can be tough, you're, especially in your adolescent years, because you're growing up, you're trying to find who you are, you're trying to find your voice, trying to find out how to express yourself. But at the same time, you feel like you can't fully be yourself because you're not sure how other people will take to it or how they'll perceive you.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So you kind of mentioned when you met Be Magic, obviously your friends knew you could rap, whatever. So where was that origin for your artistry, like becoming a rapper and falling in love with that craft?
So I probably wrote my first rhymes in, I want to say like 97, 98. I was probably like grade 5, grade 6 around.
Really?
There.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's when I think once you get to that age, like 10 years old, around there, 11 years old, that's when you really start to find your own taste, at least for me, as far as music. Because before that, it was like, okay, whatever my sister's listening to, I'm going to listen to that. Whatever my cousins are listening to, I'm going to listen to that. But I was at that age now where it's like, I started to develop what I liked. And I would I'd be like, okay, I don't like this sound. I like this sound. What is this? Let me explore this more. So at that point, I'm starting to find out more about myself, more about what I like. And then so I'm like, oh, let me try this, right? Can I do this? Is this possible for me to do? Yeah. So I just wrote it, started writing rhymes, kept them to myself, didn't share them with anybody. So for a long time, nobody even knew I did it. Wow. And then it took me a while to even get comfortable to say my rhymes in front of people. So it was one thing to write and actually tell people, right? But then it was another thing entirely to be like, oh, let me say this to you. Yeah. Because like I was a very shy kid. Very introverted. So when I was writing, I wouldn't show it to anyone. I would like hide my notebooks. Wow. I'd like put them in my drawers, hide them under my clothes in my drawers, or like hide them under the bed or something. Yeah. And I'd only write late at night, so no one knew what I was doing. Yeah. And then once I actually, became comfortable to share with other friends, like, yo, I write. Like, okay, cool. I would show it to them. I'd like pass them the piece of paper, like, yo, read this. This is what I do. Yeah. But I wouldn't actually say the rhymes to them. So that came later in high school, where it's like friends would encourage me to like, yo, we know you've got something here. Yeah. Like, let's hear it. We want to hear this come to life. Yeah. Yeah. And so that's like, it was through my friends that encouraged me to actually share my art and actually come forward with it. So I would just like spit what I had written and like, yo, this is dope. And then eventually like you go to house parties and things like that. And people would be like, yo, I want to hear you rap. I was like, oh man, what am I going to do? So I knew like you can't really kick a written necessarily in like a party type setting. So I would just freestyle and they'd be like, no, do another one. So it'd be like, I'd have to build up the courage to do one. Yeah. And they'd be like, no, we want to hear you keep going. And then the next thing you know, you're freestyling for like half an hour at a party. And that's when I kind of developed my, I guess, comfort to share my art with other people. Yeah. So by the time I met Be Magic, he was like, I was looking at him like, man, how do I get to that next level now where I'm not just writing, I'm not just rhyming for friends at parties. How do I actually get on stage? How do I actually put my voice on a record? Yeah. So he was huge. Fateh, Humble, all those guys played a huge part as far as helping me evolve and grow and bring my art to the next level, which was kind of still internal, but now starting to share it and put myself out there.
And I think that's so powerful because like talent isn't like a prerequisite for confidence or boldness. Like that's a whole nother feat to overcome if you're an introvert person, right? And like even for me, like I love videography and photography, and I'm like I watch podcasts. I'm like I could do it until I actually got on a mic, and thank God I did like some trial runs. I was just sitting here with my dad just doing like a mock interview, and I'm just like. Even till this day, I still get a little nervous every time I come on. Like, I think that long intro kind of helps calm my nerves because it's just something I could read off of. But no, I resonate with that because it's true. Like, especially depending on what type of person you are. Because I think even on IG, you're talking about like how like sometimes these gigs can be like mentally draining, right? Yeah. Because you like even for preparing a podcast or whatever, like you have to psych yourself into it. You have to like put a lot of background work into it. It kind of mirrors a lot of careers, like even professors, they got to prepare their lesson for their students, just like you got to prepare a performance for people, right? And another thing I kind of took from that too is like, we always talk about like there's this culture of, you know, you don't need people to validate you, but I think part of community and village is sometimes you do. Like, it's kind of weird, but like you don't want to say that. Like, you want to just tell kids like, be who you want to be. But I guess sometimes like I can't deny the fact that I'm here in some places because people validated what I was doing, right? Yeah,
and I think that applies to art, at least for me. If I didn't have people saying like, "Yo, you're actually pretty good," if I didn't have that, you know, like I probably wouldn't have continued doing it.
True. Yeah.
So I think validation, I don't even think it's necessarily validation, but it's just kind of like just that extra boost, that reinforcement that you need.
I like that. Yeah. True.
You know, to just let you know that you're on the right track. And I'm at a point now where I feel comfortable enough within my art that I don't need to share every little piece with somebody and be like, yo, is this good? Is this good? So I think it's definitely important in the growing stages, but once you start to embrace these characteristics that other people see within you, then that's when you get to a level where you start to build your own self-confidence. You don't need to be dependent on other people to provide that boost and just let you know like, yeah, this is good.
True. Yeah. And kind of like on that topic, just shout out to Carmen, who's behind the scene. You're probably seeing like some LEDs flashes and I'm mic'd up. He reached out to me because he wanted to do some B-roll for a video he's going to do with me. But I think part of that too is it's like, you got to build your portfolio. You got to show it to people and kind of gauge, like, you know, like kind of like soften the rough edges and stuff like that. But shout outs to him, people who are just putting themselves out there and reaching out and just trusting their skill. Like me and him were talking before we started. It's not always about the equipment you have. It's just like that creative mind, and the equipment will come later, right? You don't always have to complicate it, right?
And I think this is like, it's a dope conversation I've had with just like with other artists that I work with. It's like, you don't need the best stuff, like you mentioned, and sometimes a limitation in technology is actually a motivation for innovation.
Facts.
Yeah. True. So it's like, okay, I don't have the best stuff, but how do I make the best use out of what I have right now?
That's very true. That's very true. So even though I asked you kind of for a bit of background on your prelim, like there's no shortage of good content of you on social media, not just because you post a lot, because you just leave a positive influence online. And one of the things that you mentioned in one of your posts was that growing up in your culture, love isn't always displayed in an over-the-top, sugar-coated, full house type of way.
Yeah.
So do you feel like that affected your ability growing up to give or receive love, or do you feel like you had to learn from other ways? Like, how was that for you?
Man, that's a tough question. But like, yeah, my parents, like, we watched all the sitcoms. I grew up in that like TGIF era, Family Matters, Full House, Fresh Prince. Like, you see how parents interact with their children and how parents interact with each other, and they're very giving with how they show and how they express love. You know, every episode of Full House ended with the dad's Danny Tanner saying "I love you," and then
like
they'd
a
hug
hallmark moment.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But like, we didn't have any of that. Like that tenderness. Like, we knew that they cared about us, we knew that they loved us, but it was unspoken.
Yeah.
You know, like they showed love in other ways. Like the fact that they made sure we didn't go hungry. Like that was a form of love.
Yeah.
That's love. Yeah. The fact that, you know, they made sure we were always warm and bundled up going out in the winter, walking to school. That was a form of love. So we didn't recognize it at that age though.
Yeah.
You know, because you're like, man, why is this TV perfect moment right here? Why don't I have that? You know?
Comparison trap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I that's so true, because I was talking with one of my friends who's a pastor, and she was talking about, like, for instance, in North America, like you wouldn't want to post as a North American pastor, even if you drink, which is not forbidden in our religion. You wouldn't want to post it because it kind of sends a certain type of messaging. But like, for instance, pastors in Germany, like after their message, they're going to pubs, like because like beer is a cultured thing in Germany, right? So it's maybe it wasn't that you didn't experience love, it's just you didn't experience the type of love, that North American love that says that it's love. You know what I mean? So it's defined and shaped by our culture and TV shows, right? Because I mean, how often, like, I was actually talking to someone, and he was like having issues with his relationship. I'm like, bro, just watch any North American love movie and you'll know what to do. Like, girls, like, watch The Notebook and you'll know how to be romantic. But it's true, I guess. Yeah, sometimes we have to look at this. We don't acknowledge the systems that are shaping the way we act, right?
Yeah, and so I think like I think it just kind of goes back to like we were talking about earlier with validation and reinforcement. If you don't hear or if you don't see things a certain way, but with around love and relationships, like you don't necessarily know how to express it. Like when you want to show somebody, you want to be vocal with it, but because no one's ever been vocal with you, you don't know how to find those words. And I feel like I definitely struggle with that, like and just in terms of like relationships, not even just like romantic relationships, just like any type of interpersonal relationship. It's like you appreciate people and you care for people, but you don't necessarily know how to express it in a way that will be obviously understandable.
True. Yeah, I know. And that's why I kind of feel bad for the person. Like I say, movies again, like that person where like you see the behind the scenes of them actually loving them, but they just can't express it, or they may be an introvert, or like I've said this a few times on my podcast, like me telling my sister to put on her seatbelt, like that's love, even if she kind of gets annoyed, like I want you to be alive, you know what I mean? But like she just got married and she moved out of the house, and she's like, yeah, now when you see me, you got to greet me with a kiss. I'm like, I don't do that. Like you're my sister. Like I just like when she was home, it's just like, what's up, right? Or I'll literally just like message her downstairs, like, can you get our dog? Like he wants to go to sleep now. Like you know, like, but I have to physically show it, so it's weird. But I think that. Like
shortly after I got married, someone gave me a book. It's around love languages, and just kind of understanding.
Who's it by?
I can't remember the name of the author.
I think I've read that book. Yeah, I can't remember. But it's like acts of service, gifts, and all those. Yeah. That's a dope book. Yeah,
and that kind of opened my eyes. It's like you need to understand everybody expresses gratitude or love in different ways, and kind of recognizing the signs of that can change relationships. Because like if I'm looking at my parents and saying like, okay, why aren't they being overtly expressive? I'm not really recognizing their language, their love language. So yeah, that book kind of put a lot of things into perspective for me.
So I can see throughout your education and your jobs that you have a passion for the mind, addictions, and mental health. So what led you to your pursuit of that field?
To be honest, like getting into, like I did my undergrad in psychology. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, to be honest. Like coming out of high school, I knew I wanted to do something in the sciences, but I didn't know what. So initially I was actually, I got approved for the biochemistry program at McMaster. First year hit me like a truck. I was on academic probation. I'm like, whoa, wow, I could not adjust. It was a huge adjustment for me. And like I did well in high school. Like I got like 80s, high 80s average. And then once I got to university, I was getting like 50s and 60s. Like, what is happening, right? So I was on probation. I'm like, whoa, what do I do? Where do I go? So I took a couple of psych courses, just kind of, just to do them really. Just needed to like fill out my credits, and then actually kind of enjoyed it. Cause it wasn't just psychology. It was also looking into like the biological basis behind it. So like hormonally, how do we react? From a neuroscience perspective, how do we react? So that really appealed to me. So cause it was combining the mind with the brain, essentially. Yeah.
That's dope.
So yeah, just kind of took it from there, and then went on to do my master's. I didn't know what I wanted to do after undergrad. So I'm like, I guess I'll do a master's. Yeah. So I went on to do that. Did it, but then I was like, I don't know what to do after this. So I'm like, rather than going on even further and getting myself deeper and deeper into this hole, let me just try to find something to like find a job for a bit and see what I can do. So I worked in clinical research, and I was there for like 3 years. And I think going to a cubicle every day and just sitting there, and you're working even though I was doing research at a hospital, we were funded by like a huge pharmaceutical company. So I'm just like, man, I'm working for this faceless corporation, and I didn't feel like I was contributing anything to the world. So that's when I actually went back to school. Everyone's like, man, you've got a bachelor's, you got a master's. Why are you going back to school? Like, why? What are you doing with your life? Right? Like, get this sorted out. So I went back to school for addictions and mental health. And that was very heavily just kind of fueled by a lot of personal experiences. So I struggled with my own mental health. So it was around 2015 when it was building up for years, but around 2015 when I actually decided like, okay, I feel like I need some help with this. So I met with the mental health professional, and got like a formal diagnosis. Been dealing with undiagnosed depression and anxiety for like almost a decade. So yeah, that kind of opened my eyes quite a bit. It kind of put a lot of things in perspective. It's like certain experiences that I had in the past, like it was like, okay, yeah, that's why, you know, I felt a certain way, or that's why I reacted a certain way.
Yeah.
Like without that knowledge, you'd have no way of really understanding.
And you feel like you're more equipped to help the people that you're helping through lived experience. Like, would you agree? Yeah, because I feel like for me, like for instance, addictions, from a cultural sense, like Portuguese and Guyanese people, that's my mixes. Like they're huge drinkers. So like even seeing alcoholism in my family and seeing broken families and seeing like how that, you know, destroys the fabric of that, really helped my ability when I was a youth worker, because I was able to draw life lessons from that raw emotion that I felt, right? And growing up as a youth, because I mean, it's nice. Like I've have 2 degrees now, and kind of rethinking. Like I'm kind of where you're at, where you went into Humber, and you're like kind of rethinking where you're at. I'm not gonna take a degree because OSAP's expensive, but like I quit my full-time job recently. Not that I didn't love it. It's just because I'm trying to be more intentional about what I do, not just for a paycheck, but like I was in school for 7 years, and I'm like, I need to really find what's also going to give me joy to do. And I don't want to be that guy that I could be making 6 figures with the degrees that I have and the reputation I have in my organization, but I don't want that anymore. Right? And yeah, man, it's just it's finding that and something where you can, I feel like lived experience helps the sustainability of whatever, like going to a cubicle every day. If that's you and you love doing that, more
power to you, but it just wasn't for me.
I hear that.
And I think a great way that someone kind of framed it, like for any kids that are listening or watching, it's like when you're thinking about a job or a career, you're really thinking about what problem do you want to solve in the world.
Wow.
Yeah. So when I was like struggling with my own mental health and I got that clarity, the reason why I wanted to get into the field was like, I don't want other people who might be experiencing the same thing to feel as helpless or as alone as I felt.
Wow.
So that was like the problem that I wanted to solve. So I went back to school. And like going back to school is not an easy thing all the time. Like I was older than a lot of people in there. Everyone else there was kind of like out of undergrad, a lot younger than me. But I think when you're put in that situation, you can learn from anybody, really. You can draw inspiration, you can draw perspective. And so I internalized all that, like really kind of soaked it in. And that was like the best school experience I've ever had.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what Harmon was saying on his episode. Like he did the same kind of thing. And it's like, man, I don't know. I might think about like another program in the future, just not now. But like, I want to do it for the sake of not like a rite of passage, but something that like I truly really love doing. Like the master's I pursued recently was because I was moving up in my organization, and then that was like a prereq to like management level jobs. And I'm like, kids, be intentional with like where you spend I mean, if your parents are paying, still be intentional, but like, try to figure out what you want to do. Take a year or 2 off. Don't rush into it. Right. So as an artist, even though you've released a multitude of content, if you could say maybe a few things, what are some overarching themes that you're trying to communicate through your music?
I think with my music, a lot of it's kind of internal and external. So what I mean by that is internally, it's a lot about self-exploration. It's a lot about kind of processing emotions, processing experiences, and kind of drawing the lessons from that. So a lot of it is like reflection on things that have happened in the past that I've like, or even things that are happening now. And so writing has kind of been my way to navigate that, like emotionally, and just kind of see where my head is at. Why am I feeling certain things?
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of it is just like, it's a tool that I've used to kind of know myself better. And then from an external perspective, we don't like, it's easy to just kind of walk with blinders on and not pay attention to things in the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Like I definitely had times or years of my life when that was the way I kind of moved through the world. It's like, I'm not gonna, if it doesn't directly affect me, then I don't care. And it's kind of, I feel like, especially in more Western societies, it's easier to do that.
Yeah.
But I think just the way I grew up and, hearing or being exposed to stories from, Sikh history, Punjabi history, that definitely, it teaches you from an early age. It's like, our people have always been politically involved in some way or another.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like my education as far as like, you got to pay attention to what's going on in the world. Even if it doesn't affect you directly, it affects another group of people or another person. And by virtue of it affecting one person, it affects you as well, because we're all humanity.
Yeah. And there's something I kind of picked up on what you were saying a little earlier was it's not even just for performance sake or because people are just liking it. Like, those are elements, but it was self-care tool for you because it allowed you to, because funny thing with me is when I sit down, my mom says her strategy with me, like, I can have 3-hour talks sitting down with her. She just, like, she'll say a few things, but she just lets me ramble because I end up solving my own problem when I get it out of my head, whether that's speaking or writing it down. Sometimes when I tell my youth that all the time, I'm like, why are you not doing a pros and cons list? You have it all up in your head, but when you visually see it, it becomes more real to you, right? Yeah. So I think that's so cool because I was talking about it when this launches, the episode before last week's episode, that your craft isn't just for other people, it's to benefit you too. Like, I love doing podcasting because it's fun, because I get to meet cool people and network and just to hear their stories just as much as it is to kind of add a value to other people. Right. So one of your favorite quotes is, "A wise man sees failure as progress. A fool divorces his knowledge and misses the logic by cannabis." So what does that quote mean to you personally?
I think a lot of times, we have things we want to do in life, and whether it's arts, whether it's business, whatever it is, everybody has a goal or some sort of achievement that they want to pursue. But along the way, we're bound to slip up somewhere. Whether it's like a skill you're trying to master, you're not going to get it right on the first time. And it's easy to get lost in that frustration. Be like, man, I didn't get it. Or like, I tried and I failed. Like, it's easy to kind of internalize that frustration and say, like, something's wrong with me. Yeah. Like, I suck. I'm flawed in some sort of way, and to just give up on the goal itself. So that's why that quote is always kind of stuck with me. It's like, a fool divorces his knowledge and misses the logic. It's like, okay, what can we gain from that failure? What can we learn from that failure? Yeah. Okay, what did we do wrong? Rather than saying, okay, I did this wrong because I suck, because I'm a crappy person. These wrongs can only be attributed to me. I say, okay, what did I do wrong, and how can I develop a skill, or how can I develop different aspects of whether it was mentality or whether it was my approach. What can I improve upon the next time I go out and do it? It's very easy to get discouraged with failure and just be like, okay, I guess it's not for me. It's not meant for me. But it takes a lot to kind of like detach and kind of just be an observer and say, okay, just kind of pick it apart objectively and say, okay, I slipped up here, tripped up here. Maybe next time I'll try this one other thing, and we'll see how that kind of improves things. And like, just speaking from the perspective of like going on stage, first time I went on stage, like looking back on it now, I'll be like, man, that was horrible. Right. But it's like, you have to go through those steps in order to get to a level. Like, I'm very big on like continuous learning. Like, being a performer now, like where I am right now versus where I was 7-8 years ago, I feel like I'm light years ahead. But then I can still watch other performers and be like, wow, that person is so far ahead of me. But not in a way that like, man, I should just give up because I'm not going to get to that level. But how can I incorporate some of that influence from this person, influence from that person, and how can I, put my own spin on it, put my own twist on it, and try to, and be bold enough to actually try it.
See, that's the key. When you said continuous learning, but you can see someone who's maybe performing better than you, people shut down at that point. They're like, nah, that person's, it's the market's too saturated and this. But every mentor needs a mentor. People need inspiration. Doesn't matter what level you're. Like the president. Anyways, like people in high positions or whatever. Like they need inspirations for them too. Like they're not rid of it. Like they need knowledge. They need learning. I think your life is a continuous. Like it's cyclical. Like you have highs, you have lows, and you grow every so often, right? Yeah. So one of the things you were talking about is when you're talking about failure. I was reading something the other day that said to be an overcomer, you had to have gone through a situation that you can overcome, right? Like you have to have something that you can overcome. Or like to be a producer, you need to have something that you can produce. So there, you can't self-title yourself, or someone can't call you something without there being a situation or circumstance that warrants that title, right? Yeah. So I agree with the whole failure. You need to learn from failure. So if any, what role has faith played in all of what we talked about today for you?
So with faith, I feel like as I've gotten older, I start to have more of an appreciation for it. Because growing up, it was in the household, definitely, but it was more so something that was like, you have to do this. You have to sit with us when we do these prayers. You have to come with us to the Gurdwara on a Saturday morning. So it was like, as a kid, you want to run around, you want to play, you want to sleep in, you want to do what kids do, right? Yeah. So it became, as a kid, it wasn't something I connected with too deeply. And even with Sikhi, because the way it's written is not the way we speak. So it's almost like a different language in itself. Yeah. So it's hard to understand. But as I've gotten older, I've started to really understand it more than I did back then, and just have more of an appreciation for why we do certain things. Like the whole concept around meditation. Yeah. You hear about other people talking about meditation, whether it's from Buddhism, whether it's from like yoga practice, with like meditation, you hear it from all these other areas, and it's like, okay, maybe there's something to it. Yeah. And it doesn't have to look a certain way. A lot of people kind of interpret meditation as like, okay, you have to sit still and your mind has to be laser focused on this one thing. But sometimes just sitting quietly with your eyes closed and just paying attention to your thoughts, that can be a form of meditation in itself. Yeah. And just kind of like understanding what's written, or like the translation of the scriptures, and just understanding like a lot of it is about, recognizing where we can get tripped up. Like within certain passages within Sikhi, to talk about like, recognizing ego, recognizing anger within yourself. Yeah. And I think as I've gotten older, I've started to pay attention to that more. It's like recognizing my own reactions and being like, okay, how did I respond in that situation? Okay, I was acting out of anger. I was mad because I felt my ego was bruised. And just being like, okay, why did those things even matter? Yeah. So a lot of it, like with Sikhi in particular, I feel like it's allowed me to pay more attention to what I put out into the world. And it's allowed me that ability to kind of disconnect and recharge through meditation. Yeah. And like I mentioned earlier as well, like a lot of, whether it's figures in Sikh history or gurus in Sikh history, they stood up for something. They fought for something. They fought for the rights of other people, whether or not it was a Sikh person. And we have stories of like Sikh gurus standing up for Hindu people, or like there's Muslim writers that are Muslim poets that have their own poetry in the Guru Granth Sahib. So I feel like Sikhi really kind of opened my eyes to understanding other people's faiths, and seeing the good in everybody. Yeah. And I feel like it's easy to kind of be like, okay, this is my religion, that's that person's religion, my way's right, their way's wrong, and just kind of get caught up within that. But I feel like from the Sikh perspective, like it uses terminology, or it makes references to figures from other faiths, and it's all within a Sikh context. So I think that's a beautiful thing. It kind of allowed me to see the humanity in other people and recognize the good in everybody. Yeah, like I think no matter what faith you are, I think what I've noticed is that whether it's like Sikhism, it's Christianity, it's whatever, like for their intended purposes, people needed something bigger than them and a set of like guidelines that were beyond their everyday life. Because as people, like our natural knee-jerk reaction to life's problems is not like it's not always the most civil thing, right? Yeah. So I think that's the cool thing, because
I guess I'm not saying every faith is like this, but a common theme in a lot of faiths is it doesn't matter what your status is socially. Like once you start like belonging to this community, like who cares about your outside? This is about like what we're doing as a village and how we should grow and how we should be people, and it has nothing to do with like how much money you have or like this kind of stuff. So I think yeah, it's interesting though, because I mean, with younger generations today, they're just not having it with religion and all, and I totally understand that. But yeah, I think for me lately, I was telling my parents, I'm like, similar to what you were saying, like I want to believe in what I believe, not because you guys took me to church on a Sunday, but because I internally believe that in my heart. That I mess with that content. You know what I mean? So,
and I feel like my connection to Sikhi, a lot of it came from actually interacting with people from my own age group. Because growing up, it was more so the elders that would try to pass it down to us, and it's like I don't get this. Like I don't know how to put this in context. I don't know how to implement this. But then actually seeing people from my own age group that believed in it and were actually implementing it in an everyday way, that kind of opened my eyes to it. And be like, okay, there is a purpose to this. And just like very simple things, even like with Lungar, making sure that everybody is fed free of charge. Everybody sits on the floor, even regardless of race, caste, religion, color, anything like that. That is a revolutionary act in itself. So I think through Sikhi, it kind of really taught me a lot about compassion, about sharing, and kind of getting involved with other groups that had faced oppression. And I think like through understanding more about Sikhi and understanding our own history, where we came from, it allowed me to want to get more involved in solidarity work with other organizations.
Yeah, for sure. So if you could go back in time, if you can hop in a DeLorean and go to grade 9, you could tell yourself one or a few things, what would you say to yourself?
Man, I always kind of felt like I took too long to get started. Not to say like I feel like I'm past the point of getting to where I want to get to or accomplishing what I want to accomplish, but I feel like I was paralyzed with fear for a very long time about wanting to put my music out there, about, always needing someone to tell me it was okay to do something, and, feeling like I needed permission to do things, and I think that's what, if I could go back, I would just tell myself, it's okay to do this. If you want to, you want to make music, you want to put yourself on stage, you don't need anybody's permission to tell you that it's okay to do this.
True.
Cause I felt like I wasted, not necessarily wasted, but I spent a lot of time or a lot of years just being like, I can't show this to anybody.
Like that anxiety.
And a lot of it was just like feelings of self-worth as well. It's like, what am I doing that's so great that I deserve to be on stage? I don't deserve that applause. I don't deserve to be, like a lot, like that was a mindset that I feel like I still operate with to some extent, but back then it was like, it was crippling. It was like, man, I'm not worthy of any of this. And I think just like teaching myself that was okay. Like, confidence is going to come, but you are worthy, and you are, you don't need anything more than what you already have in order to do what you want to do.
Wow. Yeah. All right. So we reached that point in the episode where it's rapid fire. So the first thing that comes to your head. All right.
Yeah.
Pepsi or Coke?
Oh man, I would say Coke, but I've cut out pop.
Okay. Advil or Tylenol?
Tylenol.
Apple or Android?
Android.
Toronto, Brampton, or Saga?
Jeez. I mean, I've been living in Brampton longer than I've lived in Malton.
Yeah.
But like Malton's still my heart though.
Top 4 rappers of all time?
Jeez. I have like a rotating list. I don't have like a definitive number one.
Okay.
But like top 4, I guess I'd say like Biggie, Nas, Ghostface, and Black Thought.
Nice. If you had to recite word for word a song besides your own to save your life, what song would that be?
Triumph by Wu-Tang. I'd pick like the one with like 9 dudes on it. That's like 6 minutes long. But I can still do it.
Favorite place you've traveled, local or international?
Maui.
Favorite book you read or are reading?
Actually, a book that I read within the past couple years that I try to remember is The 4 Agreements.
Favorite song you're listening to right now?
Right now, just the one that's in my head right now, I guess I could tell you. Crazy Classic Life by Janelle Monáe.
Who is one person that everyone should go right now and follow on Instagram or check them out? Someone that you respect.
Jeez, this is tough, man. I guess a couple names come to mind.
Okay.
Like if you're into photography, I'd say hit up Dusty Loops. If you're into all different types of creativity, whether it's like emceeing, motivational speaking, shout out the homie Humble the Poet. Yeah.
If you had to do an emergency performance at an event, what 2 songs of yours are you performing?
I'd say probably Definition and Degrees of Freedom.
Most influential person on your life?
Damn. I'd say like as far as everyday life, probably my dad. As far as like artistically, oh man, I've got like a couple of like go-to.
All right, first thing that comes, go.
Yeah,
go.
First thing that comes. Outkast, Wu-Tang, The Roots, Nas. Yeah, probably say those ones.
If you could go back to a single point in your life just to revisit it for one day, what day would that be?
Probably the day I got married.
Nice.
Yeah, because you're kind of in that, you're in that whirlwind.
Yeah.
And it's like you don't really get to really appreciate it.
Yeah. If there was a movie on your life, what would the title read? And then I'm gonna ask you a follow-up.
Oh man. Man, I don't even know. I don't
even know. That's
I
the
don't
title.
even know. That's the name.
And if they couldn't get you to act in your own movie, who would you want to play you? It doesn't have to be a lookalike. It could be anyone you respect.
It's gotta be someone with a good beard.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't watch a whole lot of movies.
Okay.
So, but I mean, yeah, I don't know. That is tough. Yeah.
If you could have coffee or your drink of choice with anyone from any point in history, dead or alive, who would it be?
I'd say like probably like Guru Nanak.
So you'd have chai then?
I just have water.
Oh, it's hot water.
Yeah, that would probably be like the number one dude. If you just go back and be like, yo, how did this guy live? What did he do in everyday life?
Yeah, to see it in action, right?
Yeah. As far as like artists, probably the RZA from Wu-Tang. If Pac was still alive, Pac. Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
I was a big Michael Jackson fan growing up.
Yeah. If you could be any animal, what would you be?
You know what's an underrated animal no one really talks about? Ducks. They can swim and they can fly. Like, not a lot of animals can be that multi-talented.
Like penguins can just swim, but they can't fly. Yeah, that's true. Name a song that when you hear it, it puts you in your feelings. Like you think of that girl from the sandbox in grade 2 and you just catch feels like Marvin's Room type feels.
Yeah. Oh, man. Shoot, nothing is like immediately jumping to mind, but probably like Prototype by Andre 3000.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you were stranded on an island, what 2 things would you want with you?
Internet access somehow. And like my music collection.
In terms of fashion, what style did you rock that you look back now and wish you never rocked?
It took me like, this is like, I don't even know why I did this. Like it was one thing to be baggy. I think everybody had a baggy phase, but like I would always wear 2 t-shirts.
Okay.
For no reason. It'd be like 40 degrees. Like, no, 2 t-shirts.
Yeah, I know. I hear that. I was just like that. Favorite food of all time?
This is weird because I just recently went vegetarian.
Okay.
So like, I'm still trying to find a favorite vegetarian dish.
Okay.
But like, you can't go wrong. Like when I was still eating meat, like you can't go wrong with just like jerk chicken and rice or like butter chicken and rice. Yo, me and my wife talk about it all the time. Like every culture has like a bomb version of chicken and rice.
I was saying that with my mom yesterday too. That's literally what the different cultures are. It's a chicken and rice, and maybe like some type of like some type of carb, right?
Yeah.
What job would you be horrible at?
Probably a sales job.
Where do you feel most out of place?
Shoot, I feel out of place in a lot of places.
Yeah, for me,
like
it's when I go to a
everywhere.
Walmart in like Coburg, Ontario. But
I feel out of place in a lot of places.
Yeah.
Even though I've developed more of a self-confidence about myself, I still have a long way to go.
When you die, when people remember Noyz, what would you want your biggest legacy that you leave behind to be when they remember you? What would you want them to say?
I think like as an artist, I would want people to say that I said something in my music, whether it was something that they connected with on an emotional level, something that helped them through a tough time, or something that inspired them. I think that's like the ultimate goal as far as what I'd like to achieve with my art. On a personal level, I hope I was just good to people. You know, if like I have people in my life, I look back and I'm like, man, that person, you knew they cared and they were thoughtful and they always made time. And so hopefully I'm able to leave that kind of impression on people.
For sure. And lastly, if your life was a book, what's the title of the current chapter of your life right now? Something that represents where you're in your life.
I don't know if I could place a title on it, but where I'm at right now,
describe it,
just kind of describing it right now. It's like it's undoing a lot of thought patterns I've had in the past and starting to feel more comfortable with who I am and learning more about myself and being unafraid to try new things.
Nice.
Like one thing I've always wanted to do, I always told myself I wanted to do it, was like, I want to learn how to play piano. So earlier this year, like I've had a friend that was out of town and she was like, does anybody want to borrow my keyboard while I'm out of town?
Oh, wow.
So I just hit her up. I'm like, yes, I want to borrow this. So I've just been like, just like learning off YouTube lessons.
Shout out to YouTube,
man. So that's one thing. Just like why didn't I? Like, why didn't I? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or just like I've always wanted to write a book. So like years back, a friend told me like, yo, you got to take this one class with this one professor. Like amazing. And then early this year, I'm like, why don't I just do it? Yeah. So I'm in the middle of taking that class right now. Yeah.
Nice. And you know what the thing, like in terms of like, you're like, why I didn't do this, but I think sometimes when you do too many things, then you don't really like perfect that craft, right? Like for me too, I'm learning the concept of time, and I'm just like, all right, I'm gonna tackle one thing at a time instead of trying to fill my plate, which people feel like being busy is doing something, but sometimes you can be super busy and not accomplishing anything.
That's true. Yeah, I think timing is a big part of it.
Yeah.
But I think like these were things that they always intrigued me and I've always wanted to learn about. And it's like, well,
but you didn't commit.
I just never committed to it.
Yeah.
I guess I felt like I wouldn't be good at it if I tried it, or if I tried it and it still wasn't good after I learned the lessons. I'm like, I felt like it would have been a waste of time. But like again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, just like that continuous learning. And I'm trying to implement that more and put myself out there in different ways to do the things I've always told myself I was going to do someday. And just trying to learn and be uncomfortable sometimes and put yourself out there to you know, hoping that the other new people that you're putting yourself around, that they'll be able to rub off on you in some way, and you know, just try to internalize and gain inspiration from new places and different places.
All right, so you survived rapid fire.
I'm sure I gave you a lot of long-winded answers.
Nah, that's cool. So we're in that part of the show where it's guest corner. So if you want to shout out anything you have going on, anything you like, anyone you want to shout out, the mic is yours, sir.
First, shout out to you, man.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, shout out to you for having me on the show. I've been watching the show and different conversations you've had, and I think this is a great platform.
Thank you.
As far as just talking to different people doing different things, not even just art space, but people that are about community, in different aspects and whatever community looks like for them. I've definitely drawn a lot of inspiration from some of the conversations I've heard on the show. You could even ask Harmon, like,
yeah,
there was a quote that he said on the show when he was like, what do you give power to? And then I thought about that. I'm like, damn, that's heavy.
Yeah. It's one of the most watched. It's like the third most watched episode.
Yeah.
In terms of watch minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. So like after watching that episode, I really thought about that quite a bit and actually wrote a song like around that question. Yeah. That's
crazy.
So yeah, shout out to you, shout out to Harmon, and shout out to this platform. Very important.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, just other stuff I got going on right now. Obviously, like the music thing, definitely still ongoing. Got an album coming out in the coming months.
Nice.
So myself, produced by Dusty Loops. So yeah, we're kind of in like the final preparation for that, the final push for that. Getting all the artwork and all the mixing and mastering sorted out. So that's like a long time coming. We've known each other for 8 years. This is our first time working on like an actual, we've done like songs here and there. This is our first time doing like a full length album. So I'm excited about that.
Nice.
Shout out to Be Magic. Like you mentioned earlier on, we've got the Immigrant Hustle Podcast. And again, that was one thing where it was like, we've always talked about doing it, but it's just like, well, why don't we just do it? Let's try it. Yeah. Right. So yeah, I think the past like 3-4 years for me have just been like, you know, just try it. Yeah.
Nice. And we're going to drop links to everything that Noyz has talked about. So if you want to check out their podcast or info on how to check out the new album when it comes out, we'll drop it down in the description below. So that wraps up our show today. But before we go, I kind of like to give my guests a word of encouragement. Not because, you know, you're just sitting here to fish for it, but because you guys work really hard and sometimes you don't slow down to hear like authentically what people want to say. Like people can send a DM and like, oh, I love your stuff. But like, you are more than just what you create, right? So I guess I want to start with like I respect how you use your talents to spread positivity and to educate the people around you. Like I hear a lot of artists who, you know, will glorify a self-fulfilling lifestyle, but I see your heart for humanity and your community in your work. So I appreciate that about you. I feel like unlike our current rap culture that uses violence to communicate certain messaging, you're using your art as a weapon. Like I seen that post you put like my art is my weapon. And I feel like that's way more effective and powerful than like you see like these 6ix9ine and all these guys fighting over like physically. I'm just like, nah, like you can use your words, right? So I think that's something you do very well. Thank you. And like you've been saying it before, like I think your love for personal growth and helping people become the best version of themselves is so counterculture to like, it's a dog eat dog world. You got to do your thing. Like I like that. Like, and it's refreshing to see that because, yeah, man, sometimes you have to go into solitude and just work on you. Right. And it's not always about doing this and, you know, new heights, but just focusing on your daily life. Right. And lastly, I think you're putting forth a dope template of how young people can navigate life through all that you do, all that you are, and all that you stand for. I think this world is a greater place because of the impact you leave, and that's evident through everything your hands touch. So, yeah, man, I appreciate you coming out here, spreading positivity, and so much. Just dropping some knowledge for us. And I mean, like I said, for me, I came onto you in terms of like some of those songs that came out online, but I'm glad I did. And yeah, man, I'm looking forward to seeing what you continue to do and just seeing you even go through your process. Like one thing I always say on the show is that I'm looking forward to doing some like follow-up episodes, seeing where people are at. But yeah, Noyz, I appreciate you being on the show, and all the best to you and all that you do, man.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.